Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Novel Idea, August edition. I'm Jeremy Logan, an author of several conspiracy, crime, suspense novels, and your host for the virtual version of a Novel Idea Author Showcase. Our featured authors this evening are J.M. Tompkins and Justin Joseph, who will be interviewed by Miranda Ellen Grimm. Tonight's authors stand out as a new wave of writers who are risk takers. They're willing to do the unexpected, both in their writing and in their approach to publishing their works. If you are looking for something new, fresh, and not normal, we hope you will be thrilled and enlightened by our guests. I'll start with J.M. Tompkins. She writes in the dystopian genre, and her self-publishing philosophy is unique. She is disrupting the entire author-publisher paradigm and risking that her path to readership will be the most satisfying to both the reader and the author. Justin Joseph writes in multiple genres, but tonight he'll be featuring his titles in the horror vein. Justin explores every facet of his personality, and this line of his stories are designed to awaken us from our doldrums of normality. What's also unique about tonight's guests, they are good friends and collaborators. And that is where Miranda Ellen Grimm enters. We asked JM and Justin who they prefer to interview them, and they both agreed it should be Miranda, an emerging author who they met on their journey to creativity. Tony Bellin will be at the controls as usual, and we'll both stick around with our featured authors to answer your questions about their books, their writing journey and future, a novel idea, events, and plans. Without further ado, please welcome J.M. Tompkins, Justin Joseph, and Miranda Ellen Grimm. Take it away, Miranda.
Yay. Thanks again, everyone, for coming. I thought we'd open tonight with a question that authors are often asked because it can uncover some unexpected things. Readers are always interested in what motivates authors and where their work stems from. So, Michelle, can you tell us about what inspires and drives your writing?
Sure. I think it's kind of just the way my mind simply works. I write in the dystopian genre. So one thing that I constantly do is look at the world and wonder how we can make it better. How can we organize society so that there's not an underdog? And that drive to find that answer is where my inspiration stems from.
Do you think that some of your favorite authors and some of your favorite books are also about some of these same fears and these same ideas?
I do. I think it's part of being fascinated with the dystopian genre. And one thing that really kind of drove that home for me is when I was listening to another author speak in the genre, and she mentioned that none of us had found the answer to our questions yet, which I completely agree with. So I really think that we all get it from the same place.
Justin, do you feel like you're writing from a similar place of fear and answering questions that you have from your own life?
Yes, absolutely. All my writing is fear-based. I'm a big old scaredy cat, believe it or not. Even though I like to scare my readers, I scare myself first. Usually after every book I write, I have to take a cold shower and look myself in the mirror and say, what did I just do? But it's a lot of my fears, everything from aliens to my children growing up or getting hurt or what have you. It's the best way for me to tackle the uncertain future, which kind of goes hand in hand with Michelle because the future is uncertain. And I'm not finding answers for humanity. I'm just finding answers for myself. Maybe that's a little selfish, but I got to survive, you know? So yeah, I just write from the fear aspect of what's in me. And I'm grateful and blessed enough that a lot of unfortunately, a lot of people can relate to my fears. And I guess that's cool because now we're not alone.
Can you tell us about a specific work or fear that you've written about that was particularly intense or that stayed with you for a long time?
Yes, in my work, Witching Hours, it's basically the child gets sick and the mom has no insurance whatsoever. In fact, she doesn't even have a job anymore as the story goes on. And that to me is just being completely and utterly helpless. And when it comes to like, prior to having children and, get a flat tire or something like that, or like there's a death in the family, it's always, you're helpless. There's nothing you can do. But when it's your kid, it hits a little differently for me. So I wanted to explore that feeling and like, what would I do and how would I do it? And it's way more fiction than anything. I mean, she visits a monster hospital, for crying out loud, and goes on this journey. So, but I would do that for my kids. So I would do whatever it takes.
Do you think that writing that actually helped you process the possibility of one of your kids getting sick?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it really did. It helped me in a sense that the person that helps her throughout the story is based on one of my good friends who's helped me throughout my entire, I wouldn't say my entire life, but for the last 20 plus years. He was in my wedding party. He's one of my good friends. So like I put him into the story kind of like as a guide for the main character. So it was kind of just talking myself through, it's going to be okay. It's going to, thank blessed the kids aren't sick, but, just getting it out there, it helped.
So that's a really heavy idea, right? Like that you're processing a loved one's illness, a potential illness, right? And that you're working through that in your head and on the page for people to see. But you also mentioned, right, the monster hospital.
Yeah.
And so there's these elements that are comic, right, or comedic in your work, but there's also these elements of horror. So how do you think of these as being together, and what genre do you think your works are falling under?
The newer stuff's falling into dark fantasy. There's more mythical creatures, vampires and demons and stuff like that. The horror aspect is just the blood and the gore in a sense. Witching Hours doesn't really have that much blood or gore. It doesn't have that much cursing, but it's pretty intense here and there. I wanted to be lighthearted because I wrote it with my daughter in mind. So I'd say it's still hard just because of the monsters and stuff like that. But like there's a leprechaun in it, there's goblins, there's some made up creatures from my imagination that I had to put in there. It was a fun ride. And I had an awesome team helping me. One was Michelle helping me, and my buddy Oscar helped me big time. And my other author friend, Natalie Jones, helped me. But Michelle had first dibs, and she really whipped me into shape with that one. So thank you.
So Michelle, your books are terrifying and horrifying, but in a very different way, right? They're not so gory. They're not bloody. They're not necessarily horror. But what do you think your genre is?
Well, I'm definitely dystopian, which is also speculative fiction, but I use a lot of science. and just absolutely thankful for all the scientists that we have that work so hard. And I use a lot of their work in my book. So I would like to think that I can play in the hard science fiction genre. And also in science fiction, you could place me in the genetics, military history.
And so the other thing that you haven't mentioned is that you are writing a series of novellas, which is really, really hard, especially because each novella involves several characters. So you're braiding all these different plot lines together in a very short form and having one novella lead into the other. And then by the time we get to book 5, we finally meet all the characters, although they're still not necessarily in the same place together. They're just kind of braided with their plot lines. What brought you to wanting to write something that complex and that challenging?
Sure. Well, originally, Habitual Humanity was a series of 3 novels and was actually 2 different storylines. And especially at the time I started writing it, I was really busy and commuting and just didn't have very much time to read. And so I kind of wanted to market to that really busy person that still wanted to read science fiction or something like that. So each novella is essentially like an episode. It is a part of this bigger plot that has a beginning and an end. So they can read the story on their commute. Like I used to live in Jersey, so I was on the train, right? So that's what I'm thinking of. You can get through the story pretty quick and then you can move on to the next episode, but you have a beginning and end point to each of the novellas. So that was kind of my market person, was that really busy professional. And that's why I chose it.
So you have said it yourself. You just said the word episode like 3 times in that answer. So I gotta ask. No, it's great. When I read them, they reminded me of a Black Mirror episode, right? All kind of coming together in a full season. So the question is, how would you feel about your Netflix spinoff, your hit Netflix series?
If Black Mirror wanted Habitual Humanity, I would jump through the roof. That's my favorite show.
It's a great show. Everyone should watch it here if you have not. So Justin, you also write in some more unusual genres. They mentioned in the intro that you have poetry, children's books, and adult novels. Can you tell us more about those and what brought you to those?
Yeah. Well, it all started actually with comic books. I was doing comic books first, and it was just too much work. I was writing, I was drawing, I was lettering, coloring, and I was like, eh. And then my firstborn came around. I was like, well, I want to do kids' books. So I started doing children's books. Still too much work. So I started dabbling with just writing stories, and then I read, got really into Stephen King. And I was like, oh, I want to write a novel. And then I just like writing. So if it's, a paragraph, if it's a line, if it's 20 pages a day, whatever, I just like to write. So everything will have a home eventually. So if it belongs in a book, it goes in a book. If it belongs in a poetry book, it goes in a poetry book. If it's a little funny character that my daughter likes, we'll make it into a kid's book. I actually made a coloring book also for her. So there's another thing. I don't know if it's a genre, but it is now, coloring book. So it's out there. But I just enjoy the craft.
When you originally were writing your comic or, some of your children's books, do those also stem from the same place of overcoming fears?
One of the books does. It's Monster Defense 101 and I wrote that for my daughter. And it's just a step-by-step book to help kids with a nighttime routine, kind of getting over monsters. So like one of the things would be like, if you brush your teeth, monsters are afraid of the smell of toothpaste. So, okay, well, I'm going to brush my teeth then because I don't want monsters to come after me. And then if you wear your pajamas, it's made of the special material that monsters just can't stand. Oh, well, I'm going to wear my pajamas then 100%. So it helps with the parent with the nighttime routine. And then it helps the kid with the anxiety of monsters. So it helped Michelle's kid. It didn't help my kid. So
yeah,
I don't know how that worked.
Yeah, so I was going to say, Henry, or my son, really every night for a while, he had to read his Monster Defense 101 book and go through his checklist. And once he did that, he would know the monsters would stay away. And then he would be able to sleep.
I think we could all probably use some help from that book, keeping the monsters away at night. So obviously when you're writing, especially something like Monster Defense, a lot of it comes from imagination, but a lot of both of what you're working on also comes from the real world. So Michelle, you were talking earlier about how you research a book and that they would qualify as hard science fiction. So I was just wondering, how do you go about your research and what are some of the most interesting aspects for you?
Sure. I think a lot of my inspiration would come from the research rather than research for my book. So I do that as well. I read scientific journals every day. I follow universities and certain organizations that I just think are particularly fascinating, and I like what they focus on. And but then I also always have something that I am trying to dig into because it's becoming a central aspect to a plot. So right now, pretty much everything that I'm, not everything, but a lot of what I'm reading and watching has to do with black holes.
What are some of those scientific journals that we should all be reading to get smarter?
Oh, I don't want to give my secrets away. So I actually have this little secret. There's this, I'd have to look at the name of it. There's this online science journal that you can subscribe to. And what it does is it provides a collection from a ton of different universities and organizations. And then it'll give you all of everything that has to do with any topic that you choose. And I think I have like 5 different topics. And so what I did was use that to find different places that I particularly liked, and then also followed them. So that's my cheat and how I can read so much at once, is that I have a journal that collects multiple journals.
That's awesome. On your black hole topic, is that going to somehow make its way into habitual humanity at some point?
No, that one, actually, it's in a spinoff of habitual humanity. And there are black holes in another book that I'm working on for after habitual humanity, because I hope to wrap that one up soon. So
I'm excited to read it when it comes out. Okay, so speaking of your habitual humanity series, right? Wastebasket is the first novella, and you've told me that you did a lot of research for that, and the fact that so much of what is actually real doesn't seem real. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you found out when you were researching for that, and then how you wrote it?
Sure. I did do a lot of research for Wastebasket. Wastebasket was actually inspired by an article I read that had to do with problems of e-waste recycling. And I hope I do this justice, but basically the other countries have contracts with our country to recycle our electronics. So our electronics go in huge piles to rural villages that are taking them apart and putting them in these dangerous chemicals, but they are not receiving the proper equipment to protect themselves. So they are experiencing thyroid problems, infertility. They actually have mental issues, and it's becoming genetic. So they are passing it on to further generations. And especially living in such a materialistic society, that was just something that I kind of really wanted to bring forward in a book. And I don't think Wastebasket really brought that to light, but that's what it was based off of. And so I ended up putting it in North Korea because I made up this history, and I thought, I'm sorry, North Korea, but it was just a great location to put a future problem. And but then I ran into so many other things, like how in the world do I get a group of people in North Korea to witness these physical and mental problems that farther generations are having because of this. And so that's how it ended up being military, and how they ended up being in a submarine, because we had to approach through the Yellow Sea, and those are controlled waters. And then even if you read the book, the journey that they take through North Korea is as real as I could do it without going. And in fact, I did so much research on walking through North Korea and what they would come across, and all of the locations are real, that Google was very, very worried about my safety and my future travels, and warned me several times that I should not consider taking this trip. So that would be the research I did for that one.
So it's a lot of research, but I think it is a testament to your work and your skill that it provides a foundation, right, for the characters and the action of the story. You know, it's not necessarily, front and center, but it supports everything else. So I have to ask, do you have any idea the time commitment that you spent researching versus actually writing the story?
Specifically for Wastebasket, probably 90% research, 10% writing.
That's brutal.
All other books would probably be more like 80% writing, but Wastebasket was definitely the most research I've ever done.
So, Justin, it seems like more of your work comes from your imagination than from external research, but you must have to learn a lot about what the characters do or, the settings that you're putting your characters in. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Majority of my settings are just places where I've lived before. So I kind of know them like the back of my hand. I was born and raised in New York, so a lot of my stories take place on Long Island. And then my other stories take place in Florida. Moving forward, a couple of new stories take place in Georgia. That's where I lived. And now Ohio, I'm sure Ohio Tales will be coming up. I do a lot of research on body parts to see if people can tear apart each other and poke out eyeballs with your fingers. And can a human being actually bite off another human being's nose? And yes, they can. Thank you, Google. And you can take out a guy's eye with your finger, just like that. These are the research that I do that makes me want to take a cold shower immediately. But I don't like reading stuff where I'm like, that can never happen. Like you can't take a vacuum and suck someone's tooth out. Like I want to do my research and make sure it's accurate. And also on the lighter side of it, I like to do research on, did this actually happen in the year 2016? Did this actually happen in 1985? One of my new books takes place in 1982. So where were we with Star Wars? Like, can we talk about Ewoks and stuff like that? So actually, no, it was 1983. See, that's why I did my research. So they could talk about, it was in September. When did Return of the Jedi come out? It came out in the summer of 1983. So, I don't want to write a story where someone's like, well, Return of the Jedi wasn't out in 1978. Looks silly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you also have magic in your books,
Yes.
Right? So what is that like? What is creating a magic system like? Is that imagination, research, some combination?
A combination of both, just for inspiration, really. But then I like to take it a step further. That's really big in Skulls in the Bayou, the witch actually uses skulls to communicate with the dead. And there's rituals to get the ghost to come forth. And each one's different because each person's different. So each soul is different. So you have to do a different ritual for each one and kind of figure it out. Since she's ancient, she knows all the tricks, but it's not that simple for her. But I did a little research here and there on spells, and I just added my little twists to it just to make it a little bit more fun for me.
That witch person seems really, really cool. Is she one of your favorite characters to write about? Are there other characters that you're more drawn to?
Yeah, yes. Her, Alessandria is her name. Her, and in Witching Hours, the character that I did after my best friend his name is Robbie in Witching Hours. Those are the only two books right now that I'm doing sequels for because I enjoy them so much. I just enjoy the story. I enjoy the characters. They're like friends. So I want to see what they're up to and put them through hell.
Do the people that you actually know in real life know that they feature in your books?
No, I don't think my friend does. He's the only guy that's like dead on, like, this guy was made after you, kind of like a thank you.
Would he be flattered or annoyed?
I think he'd be flattered. Yeah, because he's a cool dude in the story, and he talks like him. My buddy's from Brazil, so instead of saying, he says "fack" instead of saying "fuck." And sorry for cursing, but we're adults here. And then he's a metalhead too. So my buddy's a huge metalhead. So I'm a huge metalhead, so I had to put that in there too. And just having fun with it.
So Michelle, do you have any, favorite characters that you particularly love to write about or that, live inside your head and talk to you?
Yeah, probably too many. That's probably why I have multiple personalities. No, I'm joking. To everyone else, we were joking about JM earlier, Jennifer Michelle. So I was telling them I had different personalities, but some of my favorites would be Miles, which is the protagonist of the series, because he's got something that he's fighting for and he's trying to make the world a better place. But then I really enjoy And the next book that comes out, we're going to dive deep into Gianna's history and where she is emotionally. And she's got an extremely complicated past and she's very angry. So she's a lot of fun to write. And one of my other favorites would be Darius. He's a very driven individual that is now taking a very dark turn. And he's getting pretty dark. And I never would have thought that I would enjoy writing someone in a place where he is, but he's actually a lot of fun to spend time with. And it's going to be fun to see where he goes because I'm not going to give any spoilers.
My dog is barking, so I'm sorry that if you hear him, they're excited about a deer probably outside. So, Michelle, oops, I did something bad. Okay. When you have these characters and they're changing so much across their series, does that change how you feel about them and how excited you are to write about them?
No, I don't think it changes. I think they're almost, this may sound strange, but they're almost like good friends. And even if your good friend changes or goes through a time in their life, they're still your friend and you still want them to come out and you still cheer for them. Some of them may not make it. I mean, it is literature, so it's a dystopian book. Not everything's a happy ending, but no, I still enjoy all of them.
Except that you're killing your darlings. Are any of your characters like Justin's? Are they based on real people?
No, I really don't base characters on real people. I really try to let the characters stand out on their own and they have their own history that was before the book and all that. But if someone has a mannerism that makes a character seem really tangible, then I might try to steal the mannerism.
What's an example of something like that you would steal from a real person?
The only one I can think of didn't make it into a book, but my husband had a cute mannerism that I won't share, but I thought it was adorable. So I actually put it into a book. And then when he read it, he got really mad and I didn't realize that it was something that he was trying to change. And so it kind of hurt him and I didn't mean it at all. I thought he was adorable, but I took that out.
I guess a wise choice for your marriage. So this is a bit of a shift, right? But both of you are friends and you read each other's work a lot and you help each other brainstorm and you help each other create your art. So I was just wondering, what are some of your favorite aspects of each other's work? And, what do you admire in each other's writing? I don't know who wants to start.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Ladies first.
Ladies first. With Justin, I just love that the places that his work takes me to. He's so imaginative and every single book is different. It's not the same world. And they're not even close to each other. One day I'm in hell and next day I'm in a monster hospital and just so many different places. And then one thing that I really enjoy about his books is that the places feel so tangible. They're so real. You don't just go into the world and think, okay, the rules work. You go into there and you can smell it, you can see it, you can feel it. And then in the case of one that I beta read that's not out yet, of a serial killer that eats his victims, you can taste it. So I just really love everything that he brings to the table.
That's out.
No, it's not.
Little Miss Rampage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay. I kind of got to piggyback off of her because she takes me to these worlds where I know what I'm getting into, but I don't, because, it's dystopian sci-fi. Automatically the mind goes to, robots and cloning and maybe UFOs, but her stuff is terrifying. Like Wastebasket, the ending, I was just like, where is she going with this? Is she really wow, is she doing this? And she did it. And I was just like, whoa, that was intense. And then The Cleansing was, I think, the scariest one for me because it could happen. It seems like it could happen, especially this day and age. And I'm just reading it and it was just so well written and so well crafted to begin with And then she just has this like absolute terror within her stories. I'm just like, this is rad. This is awesome. And I'm kind of lucky enough that I beta read for her, because then we kind of, okay, well, you read this, we'll read it again. I'm like, okay, cool. What did you fix? Oh, cool. You took my suggestion, and like, holy crap, you took my suggestion and went further with it. Like, wow, this is really cool. So it's a real treat reading her stuff always.
Can either of you speak to some way, that you helped the other one, and any feedback that you took that you felt was particularly valuable?
I don't know how to narrow that down. We've read so much of each other's work. I mean, all the way even back in the beginning, I wasn't published. And so that was quite some time ago, before I started the business or anything. But I mean, even beyond writing, there's plot planning, and Justin is a graphic designer, so I always get his input on graphic designs or ask for his help with stuff. So I don't know that I could narrow it down to one. I'd say his friendship, and that he's still my friend. That's what I would say, how he's helped me the most.
Yeah, it's the same here. It'd be impossible to like narrow it down. Like, every story she's helped me with, just about, I think, right? Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, just about. Yeah,
And
ever since I moved to Georgia, she's been helped me. So.
And you can still stand each other after all of this time.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
It's good.
That's true.
To
He moved to Ohio, made it easy.
to go back to what Justin said about reading, your dystopian fiction and how terrifying it is there some sort of theme or a deeper message that you hope readers will take away from the series?
Yeah, there is. I try not to share my views, but when I really set out to write the Habitual Humanity series, the main question that I had is that if the group of people that's being discriminated against look like you, does that change your perspective of discrimination? So I really wanted to make discrimination not something that was something so visual. It's not skin color, or it's not, a gender, or it's not an economic status. It's something different altogether. And so that was my desire when I wrote it, was to kind of tackle discrimination and provide a different lens for people to look through. So I would just kind of hope that it helps people to maybe, look at someone who's being prejudged or having something happen to them because of the way that they look, and just kind of think, it's not okay to hurt somebody else. And really, we just want everybody to be happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, because there's so many different characters also in your work, it never is like preachy or anything like that, because each of them is going through something different, and each reader can pull out something different from each of their experiences. So Justin, same question for you. Are there any themes, or are you hoping that readers can overcome their fears by reading your books, or something else?
Mainly the fears, a lot to do with mental health recently. One of my poetry books was heavily based on mental health and fatherhood. I joined a dad group on Facebook, and it seems like a lot of fathers struggle with the day-to-day. And for me, I was like, man, I didn't know people felt that way. And then the more I read and saw what they were going through, I was just like, oh, I see that. That is bad. But thankfully, even though I have 3 maniac children, I definitely just want to reach out to my main thing with the readers, I want to entertain them. I want to take them away. That's why I put in some humor in there. I want them to laugh. I don't want it to be all guts and gore and curse words. I don't really have any sex in my story. I don't write about that. Go read, something else, 50 Shades of Grey or something. But I just want people to enjoy it. And if someone can relate to it, that's awesome. And if it can help them, which it seems like it does, that's even better for me. Like, as long as like one reader out there says, you know what, wow, there's someone out there like me, that's cool, I'm pretty happy with it.
So entertainment is definitely one of the reasons that I read, and probably one of the reasons that many people here read. are you looking for entertainment when you read too from your favorite authors?
Yes and no. I'm looking for the conversational style. That's what I like. So I like to. Ray Bradbury is my favorite author, so he really takes me everywhere I need to ever be. With every one of his tales, he's wonderful. And I watch a lot of interviews with him too. So when I read his writing, I can hear his voice telling me the story, which I really like a lot. Same thing with Stephen King. Everyone's, heard his voice enough to, when you read it, you can hear his voice. Or you might see the movie, like if you're reading Pet Sematary or The Shining. A fun one is The Dead Zone, because you got Christopher Walken going through your head because he was the actor. But yeah, I want to entertain, but I want to learn something too. So it's not just all, I like a lot of nonfiction as well. But it has to be, I'm sure the stuff Michelle reads is probably like very in-depth and not conversational, and like, I can't even do scientific terms. I can't even fake it. But the stuff that I read is basically about the human brain, and it's very simple for a simple man to read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So Michelle, it seems like you though read, for a lot of different purposes.
I do.
Right. So aside from your scientific journals, who would you say your favorite authors are and who your influences are?
Influences and favorites. Well, one thing that Justin and I connected on immediately when we became friends was Ray Bradbury. In fact, you gave me one of his books, and so we both love him, and Ray Bradbury is probably one of the ultimates. But I also love Andy Weir, hard science fiction, and then for people that I definitely use for inspiration, I would say N.K. Jemisin, who I think is absolutely brilliant. And she's fantasy, and she's like very high fantasy, I think. That's what, I'm not a fantasy person, so I might have that wrong, but it's definitely very imaginative. But her ability to weave in dystopian society and pull the parallels to today's world, it just took my breath away. Such an intelligent work. But I also actually get a lot of inspiration from Barbara Kingsolver, because her character development to me is just out of this world. And The Poisonwood Bible is one of my favorite books of hers, but I love several others. And definitely when it comes to character and development and being true to your character and being as real as they can possibly be, she would be one of my inspirations.
Okay, very selfishly, I have never liked Ray Bradbury, probably because I was forced to read his work in high school, and you never like something that you're forced to read as much as something that you pick yourself. So, okay, so you guys got to recommend some Ray Bradbury. Like, what's your all-time favorite that we all got to go read now?
Martian Chronicles.
Yeah,
Okay, Martian Chronicles.
It's timeless. It was written in the 40s, and if you read it now, it's just wow. And he builds the scene. He built the planet. It's awesome.
Okay, so I've written that down. So our homework after this is that we're all going to go read the Martian Chronicles and start a book group.
Do it.
So oftentimes authors will say that they don't necessarily like reading in their own genre when they're producing their work, because they feel like they might be influenced by it, right? Or change what they're going for in their style. So I was just wondering, what are you reading as you are producing your own work to kind of complement, or maybe you are reading in your genre? Either one of you.
I guess he's looking at me, I think. So we're
Can you see?
Well, I try to write every day. So if I didn't read dystopian while I was writing it, I would never get to read it. And I also don't get a lot of time to read. So my to be read pile is out of control, and I'm just, every chance I get to read, I'm going to read what I want right then. So I never stop, I guess.
How high is your physical to be read pile? Do you have any idea?
Okay. How high? Let me see. Well, the one on the bedside table is probably about this thick. So, but then I have piles that's going up the wall. So I'd say about here next to my bed would be one of the piles.
That's amazing. So, Justin, what are you, reading when you're working on something intensely?
I'm reading nonfiction recently, a lot of nonfiction about religion, occults, the human brain, not dissecting it or anything like that, just how it works. But prior to that, I was reading a lot of Bradbury. I mean, steady diet of Bradbury, even watching YouTube videos with him, which I highly recommend watching those as well. He was on Johnny Carson. And I watched that video. And I think the night before, Carson had Carl Sagan on, the scientist Carl Sagan. And Ray Bradbury and Carson and Carl Sagan were all buddies, and it was cool to hear them talk, and he's got a lot of influential speeches for writers as well. So I would either read Bradbury or watch him or listen to him speak, I should say. And then there is a absolute gross out writer that I love named Edward Lee, who is he's like Stephen King. I love Stephen King. If it wasn't for Stephen King, I wouldn't be writing horror, but Edward Lee kind of has a little bit more balls. Stephen King takes you to the dead body and says, "Look, a dead body." Where Edward Lee says, "Look, a dead body. Go lay on it and lick on it. Go see what happens." And then describes everything else nasty about it. And there's a lot of times I read his work and I'm like, why do I find this entertaining? Like, I feel I'm reading it and I'll just be like, is there someone behind me? Like, I felt like, I just feel like so weird, but it's just so well written too, that I couldn't put it down. But like you were saying, I didn't want to become influential and go that route, the Edward Lee route or the Stephen King route.
Do you feel like you're changing kind of your perspective on horror from reading those two people?
No, because I totally switched gears to dark fantasy right now, I think. So I've read everything they've done. So there's really nothing for me to, be influenced by them other than just their entire library, which is just books. Edward Lee has about 50 books. Bradbury has about 75, I think. And there's some short stories. So it's very inspiring to see the body of work. But the only book I will reread by Bradbury, like every year, is probably Martian Chronicles. But other than that, I try to read up on, like I said, like just, religion and occults and stuff like that.
Are those going to be used? Is that research going to be used in something that you're working on now or something that you're building in the future?
Yeah. Skulls in the Bayou 2 goes back, I'm trying to learn more spells. And I'm writing a story about hell, first person, which is a challenge for me, but I'm doing pretty good with it. And so I wanted to, learn a little bit more about religion in that sense, like what is hell, what religions think of hell and stuff like that. I don't want to just do the Christian, the Catholic base, which I was born and raised on. So just doing research on that and just getting a couple of ideas here and there.
I would love to follow that question up with a POV question, because you just said that first person is hard. And, I've talked to Michelle about, omniscient and third. And so I would love both of your perspectives on, what you naturally gravitate toward and why is first person hard?
Because all I've written is third person omniscient. But so I wrote a story in Little Miss Rampage, which was a collection of short stories that was written in first person. It's flash fiction. And I really liked the character. It was only 1,000 words. And then she just spoke to me. And so I'm writing this whole story now of her going to hell, and her going to hell kind of unjustly as of right now. And it's different for me because it's a female, writing from a female's perspective. So obviously I'm not a female. So it's a little bit of a challenge, and it's a little bit of a challenge to not be too telling as well.
Mm-hmm.
How do you show, because the person's writing it down. It's dialogue, basically, because she's writing in a diary. So obviously she's gonna be like, well, I went to work today. Well, it was cold. Hell is hot. Well, now I got to play on giving the reader more than that, like, which I figured out on how to do, and that was a challenge as well. But it's just something different for me.
I love these questions, and they're kind of follow-up, so we'll get to them in just a second. But Michelle, if memory doesn't fail me, your novellas are mostly in close third.
Mm-hmm. They are.
Why close third? What drew you to that as opposed to maybe writing in first person?
Well, I guess I kind of always gravitated to third, and I did close third person because the characters they are going to change a lot over this series. You're going through a journey not only with this future dystopian world, but you're going through very personal journeys with each character. So I wanted to be close to them because we kind of needed to be able to be inside of their head and really feel their emotions. But and it's recently that I've started writing in first person, which was inspired by you, Miranda. And so I think I find first person easier to write in, and I've really been enjoying it because you get so much more incredibly close. And the close third person is kind of my author voice with each of the characters with their personalities in there. I don't know if that's completely correct, but then when you're a first person, you really, really dive deep into their personality. So it's been a ton of fun, both of them.
Yeah, I've enjoyed definitely reading both of those different voices from you. Okay, so before we get to some audience questions, do you have advice or favorite writing quotes for fellow authors?
You're first.
Okay. Mine has cursing in it, so everyone bear with me. It was a meme that I saw on the internet. And it's based off of the Glenn Ross movie. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that with Alec Baldwin. I forget the other actors. Man, forgive me. But basically, it's about closing deals and how the closers only get coffee. So if you can picture Alec Baldwin shouting this out at you, talent, who gives a shit? Good idea? Fuck you. Go home and tell your mother. You want to be a writer? You have to write. Always be writing. And for me, that hits strong because, like I said prior, you don't have to sit down and write a book. Just write a line or two. Or just look out the window and say, oh, wow, the sky kind of looks like cotton candy today. Well, that's a description for your next book somewhere in there, or a poem. Hey, my girl's got cotton candy hair. I love it. That's mine. Don't steal it. Just kidding. But that's my favorite quote because you always got to be writing. You always got to keep the mind sharp.
Okay. So. And I totally agree with Justin that you need to always be writing, though mine is a little bit opposite than Justin's right now. So I'm really hard on myself. I want to work hard. I want to produce, and I'm not very nice to myself. I'm not very forgiving. So my quote recently has been, all the dead bodies on Mount Everest were once highly motivated people. So maybe calm down.
And now we have two very different writing quotes for us to all put up on our computers or our refrigerators when we're working. We have a few audience questions. One of the easiest is, Jeremy, what is the title of your book about monsters?
Hey, Justin. That's the title of your book with monsters.
Monster Defense 101. It's available on Amazon. I think I have a copy.
And I will put that in the chat too.
That's what it looks like. I answered in the chat too.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
Because I'm a nerd.
Perfect. And then someone else Gail asked, Justin, you were talking in the very beginning about all the different types of writing that you do and all of your ideas. And the question is, how do you keep track of all those writings and know where they are to put them into future stories?
Notebooks, lots of notebooks. This is my 4th notebook. And it's just...
Do you ever go through and type them up and then make them searchable? I mean, how do you find anything in each notebook?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. It just happens. It's just there, and I can just find it. It's just so like this is all my work in progress right now. The other notebooks are everything that's done already. So I'm not going to really refer back to those. But I don't know.
Are they organized by project or anything like that?
No. Every page, so like here's a page of just randomness. It's just WH2 is witching hours 2. And then on the next page, we have, what do we have? Oh, poetry.
Michelle, does your brainstorming look like this?
Yeah. Then I started using little Post-it notes that are color coordinated. And I also have little, this is funny, Justin, we didn't know we had this in common, but I also have my little notes up in the corners of what they are so I can find it.
That is funny.
You're kind of trying to organize it in some way.
Yeah. So Justin, these little Post-it tabs have helped me to find, like, all the blue will be the same project.
Okay. All right.
So we all need to order Justin a pack of these and have them shipped to his home in Ohio. Kathy wanted to know for Justin, how did you or are you learning how to describe hell in your writing? And could you share a description?
I read a lot of Dante Inferno, did research on that. Actually, in the book Little Miss Rampage, there's a story called Canto 32 about Dante's Canto 32, which is the hell of frozen sinners that betrayed family members. And then Edward Lee's Infernal series, he has 4 books written about hell that are pretty insightful for me. Other than that, I'm just reading about, I have a book about God and the Bible. There's some scary stuff in there as well. A book on the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, about the soul and what happens with the soul. And then the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And then what else do I have on the shelf there? The Quran as well, Quran. So just trying to bring everything into light the best that I can, and just kind of getting ideas, and that's about it.
It's a really cool blend of like different religions and cultures and all of that.
I love religion and culture like that. I think it's fascinating.
And someone else asked about where the recording will be, and Tony wrote that we'll post the recording on the Facebook page and the website for those of you checking that out. Are there any other audience questions for these 2 lovely human beings? You're supposed to wait 10 seconds before moving on.
I think you took it too far with lovely.
No. Definitely lovely. Creepy, perhaps. Horrifying also, but lovely too. Only in what you write, you know. So do you guys have any last things to tell everybody or to point out?
I'm sure I can speak for Michelle, and if not, just throw something at me next time I see you. If anyone has any questions about self-publishing, hit us up. We love it. We live it. It's all we do. If you have any questions at all, hit us up. I believe our information's on the website, and we'll get back and help you out the best we can, to the best of our knowledge. And I do encourage anyone that's watching this that's a writer to just keep at it. Whether it's indie publishing or traditional or just making a blog, it doesn't matter. Just keep at it.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm a huge proponent of helping people to reach their best with their writing. I mean, no matter what publishing path you take, I want you to take it all the way with your writing and keep working on your craft. And if you want any help with self-publishing, hybrid publishing, I'm always willing to chat and help guide accordingly. At least I can share all the mistakes I've made, so at least you won't make those. So
I think those of us who know you, both of you know how helpful and amazing and generous that both of you are with your time. Someone asked, how and where do you market your books as self-published authors?
Social media, I think. Just social media, Amazon. Amazon has a lot of great deals for authors. You can do free Kindle for 4 days, I think, Michelle. Is that right? 4 days? 5 days?
5 days every 3 months.
Okay. And then, that's huge because, like Michelle was saying, with the commuters and stuff like that, Kindle's really taking over. I myself am a physical copy guy, so I like to keep my prices pretty low. I know. It's just nicer.
It's the dark ages.
Oh, yes,
Not really.
from the dark ages.
But there's a lot of platforms out there to help authors. The best thing you can possibly do is fall in with other authors and really help each other out and promote each other. Obviously, Jeremy is an author. Tony is an author, and when she unleashes her story to the world, everyone's going to be flipping out about that awesome tale. So we all help each other out, and that's really what it's about, because it's not a competition. That's another writing quote, I believe, that's floating around the internet. It's not a competition. We all want to get there, and I do too. I want to read Miranda Grimm's dark fantasy. I want to read Jeremy's work. I want to read everyone's work. And I want and I want to see it on Netflix, and I want people to be talking about it. So write it. Just keep going.
Yeah, so as far as advertising, I would say that I've been joining a lot of group promos, which is authors who are creating book promos and promoting other people's work. So you can, everybody shares it and gets it out there. And then you're telling people, I'm telling my readers, I know you're already reading my stuff, but here's 30 authors you may not have known about yet. Check out this promo, and definitely do some ads and join some book lists like Robin Reads, or, we all talk about BookBub, or there's just so many different ones, the Fussy Librarian. And so you can put your books on these lists. They have large reader groups, and definitely use whatever comes available and is that you can to your advantage.
So I think that we are about out of time. We have officially 1 more minute. So I thank you everybody for coming. I'm going to hand the mic back.
Yes. Thank you, JM. Thank you, Justin. You were terrific. I enjoyed it immensely. And I want to say that, and I've said it in the introduction, and that is, y'all represent to me what's new and exciting about writing. And the way you do it, the way you publish it, and the way you collaborate, I think is fantastic. So thank you very much. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it as much as I did. And I want to talk about the next novel idea. That's going to be in October. Our star of that, or the feature guy, is Brian Panowich. And Brian will be interviewed by Linda Sands. Linda Sands, you saw previously, she interviewed William Rawlings. And there's a connection here. And the connection is, these are people that I have met along my journey. And the reason I've met so many authors. I've been on steering committees of literary festivals. I produced a literary festival. There's a lady who's a bookseller here, Annelle Gerson, who does Bookmiser. She has helped with those, and along the way, we get to know a lot of authors. So the reason that Brian and Linda are together is that they are stars in their presentation. they are characters of them. I mean, in themselves, they could be on television, and they would be immediately entertaining. I've had them on panels, and they just take over. They light it up, and they become the star. And they also write fantastic, and they're prolific. They've written a lot. So I'm not going to tell you a lot about their work because it's easy to find who they are. I think you'll be fascinated. They're both fiction writers for the most part. Brian does some nonfiction. And I think if you want to be entertained, you got to see the October show. I've had Linda and Brian together on a panel. It's a little provocative. They're a little racy. They like to flirt, just fake flirting, but they like to flirt. And there will be some spicy language, but that's part of who they are. And I think you'll find them real, and I think you'll find them fun. And so join us in October. Look at the Facebook or our Novel Idea website, and for the times, and make sure you click the invite so you can get the link and tune in.